The Keeper presents 3 AI-free horror stories. In sophomore year of high school, I practically lived in the library. I'd go there almost every day after school to sit and read. Then I'd borrow a few stack of books, mostly history, and finish them at home before they were due back. It was routine at that point. That's why I noticed it straight away. I opened a book I'd borrowed about medieval Europe and saw a small white sticker stuck firmly to one of the pages. I leaned in and took a closer look. The sticker was a prescription bottle label. The edges were worn and it had been pieced together in 2 halves. One side was faded to a thin film. It had been peeled off and reapplied, but I could still read the text. At the top was the name of a pharmacy and a date, and below that were some details. T. Hargreaves. An address below that. Nosleep, 10 milligrams. Take 1 tablet by mouth every day. I didn't recognize the medication, but I recognized the name. It was Mr. Hargreaves, my history teacher. I saw teachers and students from my school regularly at this library, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But I still stared at it for a second longer than I probably should have. Then I figured it was a mistake and left it there. He must have been using it as a bookmark and forgotten. I didn't want to peel it off and risk tearing the page. The second time, it caught my attention immediately. Different history book, another label. Same name, same address, and medication. This time, it was stuck deeper into the book on one of the middle pages. I flipped back a few pages, then forward. Nothing else, just that one sticker. I remember thinking it was a strange thing to use as a bookmark. By the 4th or 5th time, it stopped feeling like a coincidence. Always the same sticker with his name stuck on a random page. I went to the library one morning to return a book, well before I'd normally go after school, and saw him there. He was exactly the same as he was in class, friendly and relaxed.
Good to see you're reading,
he said with a smile. I greeted him and we made some small talk. I almost mentioned seeing the labels, but then I stopped myself. Something made me feel like I wasn't supposed to. At the end of our conversation, I just smiled and left. A few afternoons later, I was back in the library. I went to the history section and plucked a book off the shelf, flipping it open without thinking. Sure enough, there it was again. Mr. Hargreaves' prescription label, pressed flat on one of the pages. Just then, a voice snapped me out of my trance.
Hey man, how's it going?
I looked up. My friend Matt was standing in front of me, hands in his pockets. Matt didn't come here often. He lived further out, on the edge of town. I didn't know you even knew where the library was, I remarked.
Haha, very funny. I was nearby.
We talked for a bit, and then I held up the book slightly. Look at this. I keep finding Mr. Hargreaves' stickers in the books. He stepped closer and scanned the text. A messenger asked for help from nearby towns. I tapped on the label below it, pressed flat against the page. Matt leaned in and squinted as he read the details on the faded sticker.
Huh. He lives a few streets away from me. Who knew?
Why would he be putting these in library books? I asked. Matt shrugged.
I mean, probably just uses whatever's lying around as a bookmark.
That's what I thought the first time, I said. I plucked 2 more books off the shelf nearby that I'd put back a while ago, which I remembered seeing the stickers in. He keeps putting them in books. I searched for a new book about wars. Took a moment to find the label, but I knew roughly where it was. Many families were trapped as supplies began to run out. I ran my finger across the label below it, then I put the book back on the shelf and opened the 3rd book. A few managed to escape, though most were. Underneath was the label again, in a chapter about the famine. He glanced at it, then back at me, looking mildly amused.
Maybe he's just weird.
After Matt left that afternoon, I sat at a table with the books I'd taken from the shelf laid out in front of me. I frowned, then shook it off and closed the books, carrying them back to the shelf. A few months passed. I still saw the labels in books every now and then, but I stopped paying them much attention. I didn't think about them again until I was talking to Matt at school one afternoon, leaning against the lockers while people moved around us between classes.
You know those labels you were talking about?
He smirked slightly. Yeah?
I walk past that house all the time.
He said.
Ever since I found out that's Hargrave's address, I can't not notice it. Weird knowing a teacher lives that close to me.
I shrugged. They have to live somewhere. Then a pause as he glanced down the hallway.
I've heard stuff from inside a few times when I walked past.
I raised an eyebrow. What kind of stuff? He frowned, like he was trying to decide if it even sounded strange out loud.
Like one night, I heard something scraping, I guess, and once I think I heard knocking or something, but like from the inside of his door.
He made a small motion with his hand, tapping against the locker beside him. Then there was a brief silence between us.
Anyway,
He added, straightening up.
probably nothing.
That afternoon at the library, I found myself thinking about the labels. I pulled out a few books from the history section and started looking for them. And as I found them again, one by one, I noticed something concerning for the first time. The line of text above each sticker. A messenger asked for help from nearby towns. Many families were trapped as supplies began to run out. A few managed to escape, though most were. I swallowed and looked in 2 more books. Efforts to seek help from neighboring regions. A group managed to escape, though some were. My heart started to race. I put the books down immediately and texted Matt. Hey, can you show me where Hargreaves' house is? By the time we got there, it was starting to get dark. The street was quiet, with a few distant figures occasionally walking past under the streetlights. Mr. Hargreaves' house sat halfway down the road, curtains drawn, no lights on. The same address shown on the prescription labels stuck in the books. Matt slowed beside me, hands in his pockets as he glanced at it.
Looks the same as it always does.
He shrugged.
What did you think you'd find?
I didn't respond. I couldn't stop staring at it.
We should probably go.
He added with a sigh.
Before he sees teenagers from his school just standing outside his house. That's gonna be hard to explain.
I nodded slowly. Yeah, you're right. We turned and started walking back the way we came. We'd barely made it a few steps when Matt stopped. I almost walked into him. What? I asked. He didn't answer straight away, just tilted his head slightly, listening. Then I heard it too. A dull, hollow sound. Knock. Then again. Knock. Knock. My head started racing as Matt turned back toward the house.
That's it.
He said quietly.
That's what I was talking about.
We both stood there for a second, then walked back towards the house. The front porch creaked slightly as we stepped onto it. The sound came again, louder now, from somewhere just beyond the front window. The curtains were drawn, but not fully. There was a small gap where the fabric didn't quite meet. Matt leaned in slightly.
That's weird.
He murmured.
I don't remember that.
He pointed and I followed his gaze. Behind the curtain, barely visible in the darkness, were wooden boards running horizontally across the window. I felt a chill run through me.
His curtains are always closed.
Matt said with a frown.
Wonder why there's wood all behind it.
Another knock. Then the curtain shifted slightly. Something moved behind it. I sucked in my breath. Did you see?
Yeah.
Matt whispered. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and turned on the torch, aiming it through the curtains. The light cut through the gap between the boards, and I, open wide, staring back at us. We screamed and stumbled backwards, Matt grabbed my arm.
What the hell?
The knocking stopped instantly. Silence. Then we heard footsteps from inside the house. We ran. Down the porch steps onto the pavement, away from the house as fast as we could. We didn't stop until we were halfway down the street. My chest was tight, my breathing uneven as I fumbled for my phone.
Call them,
Matt said. I told the police everything, the books, the labels, the sounds, the eyes staring at us through the window. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. By morning, everyone knew. Mr. Hargreaves had been arrested and the house had been sealed off. Inside, they'd found a girl. She was 14, only a few years younger than both of us. She'd gone missing around 3 years ago from a different state hundreds of miles away. Taken, transported, and kept hidden somewhere no one would think to look. A normal house on a quiet street. Locked away in his house for 3 years. She'd been peeling the prescription labels off of empty medication bottles and boxes. Whatever she could find in his bin with his address on it, without it being noticed. Pressing them carefully between the pages of books he brought home from the library and would eventually have to return. She couldn't write any messages. If he saw even a mark out of place, there was no telling what he would do. So she worked with what she had, looking through the words in the books and placing the labels with his address under specific words, underlining them with the stickers, hoping someone, anyone, would notice that she was trapped, needed help, and was unable to escape. It had been right there the whole time. I kept thinking about how many times I'd seen those labels and dismissed them as something harmless, before putting them back on the shelf. If we hadn't gone there that day, she might have never left that house again. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning. Midwinter, still well before Christmas, but the office was already deep in its usual off-season lull. Since our company's busy period was in spring or early summer, by now only Christmas songs were playing, and our days mostly consisted of goofing off. Then came 11:25, my usual pre-lunch bathroom and smoke break. I smoked quickly. It was cold outside, and no one wanted to stand around too long. I was the only one who ducked into the restroom, while the others headed back to their desks to watch stupid videos. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. It was just another simple Wednesday, until I stepped out of the restroom. The co-workers I'd been smoking with were still standing in the hallway, dressed in winter coats and hats. One of them was halfway through opening the door, frozen mid-motion as if time itself had paused. They were just standing there, all of them frozen stiff. At first, I thought they were joking. Maybe they'd seen some meme and were trying to prank me, but as I walked closer, it all started to feel weirder. 4 of them were standing in the doorway, completely still. None of them even twitched, nothing. "What the hell are you guys doing?" I asked with a half-laugh, but no one answered. They just stood there, completely still. "Guys, what are you doing?" Still, nothing. I reached out and grabbed one of my coworkers by the shoulder and gave him a shake. It felt like I was trying to move a mannequin. That's when I started to freak out a little. What the hell was wrong with them? Had something happened? Were they sick? No matter who I spoke to in the hallway, no one reacted. Their faces were frozen, staring blankly ahead, like prisoners of the moment. Panicked, I hurried into the main office. I had to tell someone. Something was wrong with the others. But as soon as I pushed open the door to the large open workspace, I froze again. No one moved. No one spoke. Not a sound. It felt like I was trapped inside a model room. No one in the office moved. Everyone was frozen. They stayed in whatever position they were in when time stopped. The monitors were still on. Everything kept working as normal, only my coworkers looked like mannequins. I rushed into my boss's office, hoping maybe he was different. But no, same deal. He sat there, bored expression on his face, leaning on his desk and not a single muscle moving. He was completely frozen too. That's when I really started to panic. Only one logical choice remained: get out of here. As fast as possible. I bolted toward the elevator, nearly knocking over one of the coworkers frozen at the entrance. I jammed at the call button over and over, but nothing. It was like the button didn't even exist. There was power, the screen was lit, but the elevator didn't move. Alright, plan B, the stairs. I ran to the stairwell, but the door wouldn't open. I yanked on it like a lunatic, nothing. Locked? Or was it broken just like the elevator? What the hell is wrong with this place? And why am I the only one still moving? Next idea, the window. Even if I couldn't climb out, we were on the 7th floor. At least I could try to signal someone. Or something. I hurried between the rows of desks. My coworkers were still just sitting there, motionless. Not a single part of them moved. Their frozen eyes stared blankly into nothing. The window wouldn't open either. I pulled out and twisted the handle, but it didn't budge. It felt like someone had sealed it shut. I stood there, clutching my head in frustration. The office had never been this quiet, this calm, and that only made it more disturbing. I was terrified, and I didn't understand a single thing about what was happening. Outside, the snow had started to fall. I slumped down into my chair at my desk, hopelessly. I tried all the company phones, nothing but silence. Even my own mobile showed no signal at all. What the hell happened? I just went out for a smoke and a quick bathroom break, and now it seems like time itself has stopped. And me. Why didn't I freeze like the others? And more importantly, how the hell am I going to get out of here? That's when I heard a loud thud from the back of the office, somewhere behind me. I jumped up instantly, both excited and terrified. Was someone else here, after all? Or maybe the others were starting to wake up? But no, there was no one there. Everything and everyone was still exactly where I left them. Some sitting at their desks, others frozen mid-action by the printer. Outside, the snow was still falling, and since the clock had slipped to 4 p.m., the darkness was slowly beginning to creep in. I should be heading home soon, but I highly doubt I'm going anywhere today. I just hope help is on the way. Surely, someone will notice when an entire floor of people doesn't show up. That's when I noticed, still standing next to my desk, that one workstation was empty. But the monitor was still on. If I remember right, that's where Sandra sits. A kind, middle-aged woman. She always brings muffins at Christmas. We had coffee together just this morning, and now she was gone. Could that thud have been her? Cautiously, I hurried over to her desk. It was just a few rows down. No sign of Sandra. Her chair was knocked over, and her cat-themed coffee mug lay on the floor. The last bit of her drink spilled out across the tiles. "Sandra!" I called out loudly, hoping she was still nearby. "Where are you, Sandra?" But no reply came. Just the same graveyard silence as before. The hum of the machines was the only sound, until the fluorescent lights suddenly began to flicker. And then it happened. The thing I'd feared most. All the lights went out. Outside, it was nearly pitch black. Massive snowflakes drifted down slowly, almost majestically. Inside, the office was plunged into near darkness. The overhead lights were dead, but the monitor still glowed, casting a grotesque, cold light across the quiet room. My coworkers' frozen bodies looked even more disturbing now, faintly illuminated in that ghastly glow. It would have been even better if they were at least working, or talking, or if I could hear them breathing, but there was nothing. Then I heard it. The door to the supply closet at the back of the office creaked open. Every part of me wanted to run, But where? I crept back to my desk. Of course, I immediately banged my shin on the corner of a table and knocked over a small trash bin in the dark. But at least there, I felt a little more comfortable. It was my desk, my spot. I stared at the supply closet door. There was only darkness beyond it, no movement, no sound since it had opened. Maybe it just stayed ajar, maybe a draft pushed it open, but the windows didn't open either. So, what did? And then I saw it, the horror. I just stood there, frozen, like the others around me. But I was still conscious, still very much awake. In the corridor between the desks, a strange figure was shuffling towards me. It looked like a dried-out corpse. Its skin was pure white, clinging tightly to its bones. Its face was sunken, eye sockets dark and hollow. It had no mouth at all. But its bony arms were so long they reached the floor, ending in huge, knobby fingers. From its hunched chest, smaller, skeletal hands dangled forward, reaching, twitching, and these tiny hands moved as if they were playing invisible piano keys in the air, or searching for something unseen. I couldn't move a muscle. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, and I didn't even try to hide. I just stood there in my stupid shirt, staring as the monitor's glow lit up the grotesque figure, itching ever closer to my desk. It was almost upon me when, with a sudden instinct, I ducked down and crawled under the desk. I don't know what drove me. I don't know why I thought it was a good hiding spot, but at the time it felt like the only one I had. My coworkers' frozen bodies still sat in place at their desks. It was all absurd, at least as much as I could make out in the dim light. Then, in the blink of an eye, the creature was right there, standing at my desk. I saw its massive, bony feet. The nails were like knives. Its body was tall and gaunt, so skeletal it seemed to stretch all the way to the ceiling. I crouched under my desk, holding my breath. Damn cables around my neck, and between the bag and the chair. I barely had space to fit. But the creature didn't notice me. It just stood there, waiting. Maybe for me, maybe for something else. Then it moved. Its enormous hand rested on the head of the man who sat behind me. Pete. Pete was the guy in the desk right behind mine. A brown-nosing little machine. No one really liked him, but even so, I didn't want to see what that thing was about to do to him. I trembled as I waited to see what would happen. The monster simply squeezed Pete's frozen head, then tipped him out of his chair. Pete lay on the floor, staring at me. I didn't make a sound. The creature reached down, feeling for Pete's body. With its long, skeletal fingers, it grabbed hold of his face and dragged him away. It turned and headed back the way it had come, shuffling slowly, just as before, pulling Pete's paralyzed body behind it. Only one thought flashed through my mind. I have to get out of here. I sat trembling behind my desk, listening as the grotesque creature shuffled across the office carpet. What the hell was I supposed to do now? There was no way out. None of the exits would open. From under my desk, I could see clearly in the nighttime gloom. Outside, snow was falling in heavy sheets. Had time stopped out there too? Or was life continuing as usual? Cautiously, I crept out from under the desk, just enough to look around. The creature was now shuffling near the opposite end of the office, far from the supply closet. Pete was no longer being dragged behind it. I had no idea where he'd been left or what had become of him. The thing just wandered slowly, and the tiny skeletal hands hanging from its chest were twitching, pawing at the air as if searching for something. I couldn't stay in the room with it. It was only a matter of time before it found me. I had one chance left, to sneak into the lobby again and try the elevator or the stairwell door one more time. The creature was still at the far end of the office. I crawled slowly on all floors, inching my way toward the door. I made it surprisingly far, right to where my smoking buddies had been frozen. One of them still held the office door open, so I slipped through easily. The lobby was dark too. The elevator wasn't even lit. I rushed to it and jabbed the buttons, but nothing. None of them worked. Then I turned toward the stairwell door, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The creature was there, standing in the doorway. At the office entrance, looking out. It was staring at me with those sunken, empty eyes. It knew I was there. It wasn't shuffling anymore. It ran straight at me. I yanked the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. This is where I'm going to die. But then, as the creature's thundering footsteps shook the floor of the lobby, I saw it. The light was on in the restroom. With one desperate leap, I sprinted over, jumped inside, and slammed the door shut behind me. I darted into one of the stalls and locked it tight. The monster smashed through the restroom's main door. I was gasping for breath, crouching in the stall, trying to stay as silent as I could, but the thing knew exactly where I was. It started pounding on the stall door. Its massive hand slammed against the metal, making the entire room tremble. The door bent inward. It looked like it could burst open at any second. There was nothing else I could do. I screamed from pure fear. And then, a familiar voice spoke.
Matt? Matt, are you okay in there?
At first, I didn't even notice. The creature's pounding had stopped. The stall door no longer shook. There was silence. Calm. Familiar. Just like the restroom always used to be. And then someone spoke again from the outside stall where I was hiding.
Matt, is that you in there? What the hell are you doing?
I was terrified. My shirt was soaked with sweat. I was shaking like a leaf. With trembling hands, I opened the stall door. It creaked slowly outward, and standing there was a familiar face. Dave, my friend. The guy I always went out for a smoke with. The same guy who, just a moment ago, had been frozen in place by the hallway door. Now he was standing there, staring at me with suspicion, holding a coffee mug. I was crouched on the toilet seat, drenched in sweat, pale as a corpse, and shaking uncontrollably. Slowly, without saying a word, I climbed down. I stumbled out of the stall, staggering toward the door. Dave didn't say anything, he just looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I staggered back into the office. Everyone was back in place. Some were working, others just chilling. The clock said 4:30. Half an hour left until the end of the day. Dizzy and disoriented, I started looking for the ones the creature had taken. The chair behind my desk was empty. Pete's stuff was gone. No picture of his dog, no stupid motivational calendar. Dave and a few others stood behind me, staring, confused. What the hell is wrong with me? Suddenly, I spun around like a madman and whispered, "Where's Pete?" No one answered. They just looked at each other, puzzled, as if they didn't even know who I meant. "Dave," I said, stepping closer. "Dave, where's Sandra? Muffin Sandra. You know who I mean." Dave just shook his head.
Matt, there's no one named Sandra who works here.
I looked around, panic rising in my chest. What the hell is going on? And then one single thought filled my mind. I need to get the fuck out of this place. So I've been dating my girlfriend for almost a year, and last month we moved in together. Maybe that's kind of fast. I don't know. My parents sure thought it was. But honestly, everything was great in the beginning. We get along really well, and we've never had more than a brief argument. But then she started whistling. It's so dumb, I know, but she's always whistling this weird song, and it really gets on my nerves. My mom kept telling me that once you move in with someone, you discover all the quirks that they've been hiding from you. And it's not like I didn't expect that to be true. But for some reason, this is just an ongoing issue with us, and I don't know what to do. At first, I would just hear her whistling it when she was showering. It was kind of cute, like her own little bathroom theme song. I didn't recognize the melody, but it was very distinct. I could mimic it from memory if I wanted to. In fact, sometimes it gets stuck in my head and it drives me a little crazy. You know the type. After a week or so, I asked her what the song was and she just laughed. I'm wondering if maybe she came up with it on her own. Something that she does absently, especially once she started doing it more. Like, I'd be reading a book and then she'd be on the computer and she'd just start whistling. And I tried to ignore it. I seriously feel like a dick for being so grumpy about it, and I know she wasn't doing it to annoy me. But she'd just go on, and it would pull my attention away from whatever I was doing. So, I finally said something a few nights ago. I was going over some legal documents for work, and she just starts whistling like crazy, on. And I'm trying to just block it out, but it's seriously excessive. Like, I know you guys are probably thinking that I was overreacting, but it felt like she was whistling right into my ear. And it just frayed my last bit of patience. As calmly and nicely as I could, I called out to her and asked her to quiet down. She didn't reply. I asked her again and she still didn't answer. So I left the bedroom and found her in the living room, watching a movie. She wasn't whistling anymore, and for some reason that really irked me. It felt like she was messing with me. And she just looked over at me like she didn't know what my deal was. I asked her if she could stop whistling so much, and she told me.
I wasn't whistling.
Now, I get that maybe she doesn't realize she's doing it, but no one whistles that much and doesn't notice. It's not really like her to mess with me like that, and I don't know what she's trying to get out of this. I thought maybe she was teasing or playing a joke, but she had to see how annoyed I was. I asked her again to just not whistle so loudly, and she didn't answer. There was tension in the room, and it felt like our first fight since moving in together. Even though she didn't whistle for the rest of the night, I couldn't focus on my work anyway because I was upset about the confrontation. Then, of course, the next night she was whistling again. I hear her when she comes home from work, and she keeps going for at least an hour. I didn't want to have another fight, so I just hung out in the bedroom and listened to her move around for a while. I felt like I was blowing things out of proportion, but honestly, how hard is it to just not whistle all the time? It was no big deal when it was now and then, but I feel like she whistles more than she even talks to me now. So I'm sitting up in the room, thinking about that, and that's probably why I was worked up when I finally came down. She was cooking dinner, which is sweet, but she was still whistling. So I said, softly, "Hey honey, maybe we should put on some music instead, so you don't have to fill the silence with whistling." I tried to play it off like a joke, but I knew she'd probably see through it and get annoyed again. She didn't even turn to face me, just huffed and kept cooking. After a minute, I told her I was sorry about the other night, but the whistling just sort of strikes my ear wrong. And if she could try to not whistle so much and so loudly, it would make my life a lot easier. I know it seems controlling and nitpicky, but it was bothering me a lot. We all have our things, you know. I try not to chew loudly at the table because it bothers her, so why can't she just stop whistling sometimes for me? But she totally freaked out. She turned around and told me,
I wasn't whistling. I don't know what your problem is.
At this point, I don't get why she was doing this. It obviously wasn't funny for either of us, and she seemed genuinely upset. So I don't know why she kept provoking me. I asked her what her deal was, why she was so defensive about the stupid whistling, and she told me to shut up. She told me,
I'm sick of talking about it.
Like I was the one being unreasonable. I never get mad at her, but I just snapped. I told her to stop whistling before I lost my mind. She called me crazy just because I was getting a little upset, and somehow that was all I could take. I grabbed one of the cast iron pans from the stove and swung it at her head as hard as I could. She fell over and smashed her head on the counter, but I swung the pan again before she hit the ground. I think I hit her maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but I feel horrible. There was blood everywhere, and her jaw might be broken. No, I think it is for sure. I couldn't believe I'd lost my temper like that, and I have no idea how we can move past this. I feel so ashamed for letting things get physical, regardless of how much she might have been provoking me. But here's the kicker. She's still fucking whistling. And I asked her nicely to please stop, but now she won't even pause. For 2 days she's just been lying on the kitchen floor, with her eyes rolled back and her mouth hanging open, just marinating in congealed blood. And she's still fucking whistling. I don't know what to do. I don't want to break up, but this is just too much. I just need to shut her up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Alright, now for the credits. In Story 1, The Lore of Magnetti voiced Mr. Hargreaves. Grintells voiced Matt. In Story 2, Poltergeist voiced Dave. And in Story 3, Vox Animus voiced the girlfriend. Story 1 was written by Twisted Urban Tales. Story 2 was written by Morton X. And Story 3 was written by Queen of Moths. And lastly, I want to thank Morgan Goodman, who made the music for the intro and the background story music. Also, I'm going to go on a bit unscripted about what's going on in the narration scene and how that's going to affect the channel. So it's been getting kind of crazy keeping track of who has and hasn't been demonetized and who's been remonetized and who got demonetized again. But lately, Dr. Plague, who has appeared on our channel before, has been demonetized. Alongside Grintells and Jordan Group. So it's kind of put things in perspective for me, and I kind of view this as YouTube may not be the way to make money directly, but even if there's no money in this at all, I still love doing this, so I'm not going to stop. I do think I'm still going to push YouTube, just because that's a good way to get discovered, and from there, if I stop dragging my feet and finally get my Spotify and whatnot going, I'll post stuff over there, and then from YouTube, people will hopefully transfer over. If YouTube doesn't start fixing this issue, which hopefully they will, but can't count on that. Speaking of which, part of the reason I have been in my previous videos been trying to appear so much in my suit has been to mitigate the odds of being deemed inauthentic in the future. But you'll notice in this video I did not appear in my suit, and there's a few reasons for that. One of them is I was recently on a podcast, which that episode hasn't aired yet, but during that podcast, my boots, because they have so much dang metal on them, I crossed my legs and it ripped my pants, so dealing with fixing that, and also my main mask broke, the, lens visor thing on it, so I have my backup mask, but I don't like wearing that as much, and as much as I love the suit, I don't want to ever retire it, because I think it just fits so well with the whole character and whatnot. I do have some health issues, mainly like getting nausea and headaches and brain fog, whatnot, which I don't want to drone on right here, but the big thing is when I'm wearing that mask, all that light just blasting in my face, it tends to aggravate things, so I don't want to get to a point, which I have quite a lot lately, where I just dread making a video because I know I'm going to have to get in the suit and it's just so clunky and I'm blind and just I'm going to have a headache after. So I want to make sure that, especially if I'm basically doing this with no money from YouTube, I want to actually enjoy what I do. So I do want to appear in the suit periodically, but I don't want to do it every video and just burn myself out, especially if I'm trying to keep a schedule of roughly 1 video per week. So instead, I'm going to work on getting different visualizers for every video, because I really don't want the visuals to slip on the videos. And my final thought is I want to eventually get a Patreon going, but if I do, I want it to actually provide value to you guys. So in the comments, if you want to give me any ideas of how many tiers there could be, what you think each tier should have, what would make sense for you, and even once we get to this point of there being a Patreon, please don't send any money to me that you need for yourself or your family. Just prioritize your own life first, and even if you do have the disposable income, don't be spending it on me unless you think what I'm providing is genuinely worth it to you. That's a big thing for me. I don't want to take anyone's money if I'm not truly earning it. And lastly, I want to soon make like a subscriber goal. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know what the number will be. I don't know what the end thing will be, but that's definitely on my mind. So be on the watch out for that.